The average American thinks they're doing okay until they see the real numbers. The national average rent in America has crossed $1,800 a month, but the median income for black households is $56,000 a year, and for the white households is $92,530 a year. When you also include inflation and living above your means, the average person is literally paying to go to work. Today, we look at the raw, unfiltered data of exactly who is surviving and who is sinking in this economy. Welcome back to the Tyshon Brown Show. I appreciate you for being here. Let's learn something. See, today we are breaking down the data on the earnings, spending, and where we are headed as Americans. The typical Asian American working full time, year round, including part time work too, sits at $86,560 per year. Asian Americans have the highest median household income of any racial group in the United States, reaching $121,700 annually. How are how are Asian Americans making all this money? I'm about to tell you. Well, education is the single biggest driver. According to Census and Pew Research data, roughly 61% of Asian Americans ages 25 and older have a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to the national average of only 38%. Even more importantly, though, they have a massive percentage of graduate and professional degrees, like master's degrees, PhDs, and MDs. Now, did you know an Asian American with a master's degree earns a median of $118,688 a year? But check this out. While a white American with the same credential earns $98,430 a year. Now, also, 1 out of 10 Asian Americans live in poverty in the United States. Just want to throw that out there. Now, if I asked you which racial group has the highest number of people living in poverty in America, what would your answer be? I know. See, most people look at the percentages where 1 out of 6 Black Americans and 1 out of 7 Latino Americans live below the poverty line. But because of the total population size, the raw numbers tell a complete different story. There are 14.6 million white Americans currently living in poverty today. That is more than the total number of poor Black and Asian Americans combined.
That's not true. You're lying, Tyshon. You're a liar.
No, 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 I'm not lying. Because white Americans make up the largest single group of poor people in the country by a massive margin because of the overall population size. Now, let's talk about Black Americans for a second. You see, over 55% of the Black population in America lives in the southern United States, like Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, where wages are historically lower across the board for all races compared to high earning coastal states like California or New York. See where I'm going with this? If more Black Americans lived in higher wage areas, don't you think they'll earn more? Now, let's talk about the marriage household dynamic. You see, white and Asian households statistically have a much higher rate of married, dual income couples living together. Black households have a higher statistical percentage of single parent or single earner homes. Now, when you are looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and when you are regarding where Black Americans have the highest representation or leadership, there are two distinct answers. By a massive margin, the industry where Black Americans lead in pure employment, it's education and health services. More than 28% of all employed Black Americans work in this sector, which is significantly higher than the national average. Let me explain. 38% of all nursing assistants in the US are black. 31.8% of all licensed practical nurses are black. Black Americans represent 26.2% of all judges, magistrates, and judicial workers, nearly double their percentage of the general population. Now, while these jobs provide amazing stability, they rarely create the kind of generational multi-million dollar wealth found in tech and private equity. Now let's talk about entrepreneurship then. By a massive margin, white Americans have the most entrepreneurs in total. They own roughly 82% to 84% of all employer businesses of America, representing over 4.5 million firms. As the minority group, Asian Americans lead the nation in entrepreneurship by volume. There are over 642,000 Asian owned employer businesses in the US, even though Asian Americans make up roughly 6.4% of the total US population. They also own nearly 11% of all businesses. They generate over $1 trillion in annual receipts, the highest of any minority group. About 24% of these businesses are concentrated in the food and accommodation sector. Hispanic Latino Americans are the fastest growing group of business owners in America. There are over 406,000 Hispanic owned employer businesses. That's roughly 6.9% of all US businesses. Now, the Hispanic Latino Americans businesses growth sits around 8.2% every year, with their largest presence concentrated in construction, transportation, and warehousing sectors. Black Americans own 161,000 employer businesses, about 2.7% to 3% of the US total. However, though, Black entrepreneurs are heavily concentrated in sole proprietorship, which means businesses with zero employees. They are the sole worker. Now, if you count aside side hustles, uh, independent contractors, and solo consultants, the number of Black entrepreneurs skyrocket into the millions, even though um, they represent a smaller fraction of larger corporate employers. Now, breaking down the math for millions of Americans of this economy was my goal for this video. I hope you've learned a lot today, got a bit inspired by the great things people are accomplishing and how we can improve as a country pertaining to our finances. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. This is the Tyshon Brown Show, and I'll see you again. Goodbye.